So I want to do a little review today with our genetics unit. I'm going to focus on the terms here that you see on the screen: alleles, dominant and recessive traits, homozygous and heterozygous genotypes, phenotypes, and Punnett squares. So as we go through this, I'm going to use the example of eye color to review all of these concepts. And for this, I'm going to be saying that there is one gene for eye color. Now, truth is, there's actually almost 14 genes that help control for eye color, but we're going to ignore all of those for now. But one thing we need to remember is what we know about genes and how in every cell of your body, here's a cell, there's a nucleus. And inside the nucleus is all of the genetic material, which every now and again winds up together and forms chromosomes. Those chromosomes contain all the genetic material that give you all of the traits you have. And every single cell of your body has those same chromosomes in each one. If we could look at chromosomes under a microscope, this is pretty much what they'd look like. And you have 23 pairs of chromosomes in every single one of your cells. One chromosome is full of material that came from your mom, and the other chromosome is full of material that came from your dad. The chromosome is full of sections of DNA called genes. Each gene codes for a specific trait. You therefore have two separate codes for each trait because you got one code from your dad and one code from your mom. These codes are called alleles. In our example here, the mom has two alleles for her eye color. And these alleles are drawn in brown to represent that she has two alleles for brown eyes. So, in representing that as a genotype, we say she has capital E, capital E. The E I just chose randomly as the letter to use for eyes. You can use any letter when you're using genotypes, but a capital letter will always mean dominant. And brown eyes happens to be for this trait dominant. So two capital letters represents her genotype for her brown eyes. But what if these were her alleles? Now we can see by looking at her chromosome that she got one allele from her mom for blue eyes, one from her dad for brown eyes. That means her genotype is now capital E, lowercase e. But her phenotype, the trait that you see, is still brown eyes. So remember, genotype are the letters that represent the alleles for a trait. So this mom's genotype could be big E, which would give her brown eyes, or big E, which still would give her brown eyes, because the capital letter is dominant. As an extra review on this, we can go back to the pea plant where we started this unit. So this over here is the tall pea plant. And the tall pea plant would either have the genotype big T, or big T, little t, since we're using T to represent the height of the plant, that trait. And then the short pea plant, that would have to be little t, because it's recessive. The short plant has to be little t. So the genotype here is the two letters. The phenotype is what you see from those letters, short plant or tall plant. Genotypes are further classified into more categories. When you have the same letter genotypes, that's called homozygous. This one is homozygous with two capital T's. This one is homozygous with two lowercase t's. The difference here is that if it's capital T's, that's dominant. So this is homozygous dominant, whereas this one is homozygous recessive. And then when you have a genotype with two different letters, a capital and a lowercase, that is heterozygous. These terms are important to remember because it comes up again and again as we talk about different genotypes. And then again, phenotype is simply what you see from the genotype. A tall plant, a short plant, blue eyes, brown eyes, red hair, tongue roller, attached earlobes, those are all phenotypes. Part of the fun of genetics is predicting what the offspring of two parents will be like, whether it is a pea plant or people. In our example with eye color, I've represented the alleles of mom and dad with some cartoon-like chromosomes now. According to what we see here, dad's genotype would be little e, because he has blue eyes, two blue alleles, and mom is big E, because she has two brown alleles. Based on that, we can figure out what the genotype of the baby might be. We do that with a Punnett square. Punnett squares are used to help predict what the offspring's probability of a certain trait will be. So what we have here is mom with capital E, and dad with lowercase e. So for the Punnett square, you cross those two genotypes. And then inside are all the possibilities of what the offspring could have as far as a genotype. And here you can see that with mom as a big E, and dad as a little e, the child has a 100% chance of being a big E, which means that every offspring will have brown eyes. The phenotype here will be brown eyes. But what if we change the mom's genotype? Now dad is still little e, but mom is big E, She still has brown eyes as a phenotype, but she has a heterozygous genotype now. So we can cross this again with the Punnett square. This time when we cross it, mom has the heterozygous genotype. Dad is still homozygous recessive. But we will get different results for the offspring this time. As you bring each letter into the Punnett square, you'll see that now there is a chance that their offspring could have blue eyes. When you look at a Punnett square, you can say 1 out of 4, 2 out of 4, or 3 out of 4 to get your probability. In this case, there's a 2 out of 4 chance, which is a 50% chance, that an offspring from those two parents could have blue eyes, and a 50% chance that they would have brown eyes. Here you have a challenge. What are the possible genotypes for the dad's eyes? You can't see his eyes. You can pause the video now and work out your answer with your own Punnett square. If you need a hint, there will be 2 possible genotypes as an answer. So to work this out, we know that mom has to have little e, because she has blue eyes. So she has to be homozygous recessive. But we don't know what dad is. So if we guess that dad is homozygous dominant for brown eyes, then we can check ourselves. And we notice if we do the Punnett square, we come up with 0% chance that that baby could have blue eyes. And we see that the baby does have blue eyes, so dad cannot be big E. So we'll try something else. Could he be heterozygous, big E? When we do the Punnett square for this, we find out that there is the 50% chance that the baby could have blue eyes if the dad is heterozygous for brown eyes. And of course, if the dad is homozygous recessive, then it's easy to see that the baby is 100% blue-eyed. So we can see that the dad does have blue eyes, so he is homozygous recessive. He could have had brown eyes if he was heterozygous, but he could not have had brown eyes and been homozygous dominant. So to sum up, an allele is the specific code you have for each trait, one from your dad and one from your mom. A dominant trait is the allele that gets expressed because it dominates over the other trait. A recessive trait is the allele that does not get expressed because it loses out to the dominant trait. A genotype is the letter representation of the alleles for a trait. And a homozygous genotype has two of the same letters, either two capitals or two lowercase, and a heterozygous genotype has one capital letter and one lowercase letter. The phenotype is the physical expression of the trait, like tall or short, blue eyes, red hair, tongue roller, all of those traits. And the Punnett square is the way to plug in parent genotypes and figure out the probability that offspring will have a certain trait. So hopefully this review has helped you, and you can always go back and look again at anything that was confusing.